Welcome to Pig Pods. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Welcome to Pig Pods, your success podcast. I'm Angelos.
And I'm Mo. Today we're looking at property and more specifically getting started and buying your first investment property. What is the process and what are the potential pitfalls to look out for and avoid, Angelos?
So we're fortunate today to be joined by David Aggiss, who's a mortgage broker from 360 Mortgages and also a property investor himself, so he can see things from both sides. David, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me on. Really looking forward to this one. Should be good.
Brilliant. So a mortgage broker is a key member of your power team, as I like to call them, but we'll come on to what that means a little bit later.
So Angelos, I think it's important that we talk about why people get into property to start with, or what people's specific reasons are, because really, if you don't know why you're getting into it, like what's the point in starting? How did you start? Why did you start to get into property?
Yeah, that's an important point, Mo, because ultimately people may think, yeah, property's a great investment, but they're not necessarily investing for the right reasons. Why did I get started in property? It was a little bit different from your average investor. My mum made me, and this is simply because I just recently started work and I wanted to just crack on with a great IT career. And the reality is that I wasn't necessarily aware of what property is or does or how it can benefit your lifestyle if invested correctly. So my mum one day heard about this great deal, which was a 6-bedroom student house close to the university. And she said, I really recommend you go down and have a look at it. And I said, I'm really not interested, to be fair, Mum. But I went anyway because I trust her judgment. I went there and soon enough I ended up buying it. And that for me opened up my whole world to a different view, shall we say. So my why was a little bit different from your average investor, but it was, for me, it opened my eyes up to a different way of living. So rather than having a 9-to-5 job, buying the property actually exposed me to seeing things where you don't necessarily have to work for 40, 50 years in a career. So that was my why. I mean, what was your why?
Well, I was just going to say, Angelos, did you give your mum a sourcing fee?
Yeah, no, I didn't. But I took her out for a nice meal.
Okay, well if you're listening, what's your mum's name?
Banner Yoda.
If you're listening, Banner Yoda, I think you deserve a sourcing fee for that one. You started something brilliant. So I started. Me and my business partner James bought our first property when we were actually at university, and it was really driven from the fact that we could see that our landlords that we'd had throughout the kind of years we'd already been at university were making a lot of money without knowing all of the costs involved. We knew, it was 78 quid a week or whatever per room, per person, and there was 4 or 5 of us in the house at a time, so there's some money to be made there. So yeah, we bought ours when we had our industrial placement year at uni. So Dave, how did you get into it?
Mine was to get out of the rat race, really. To get out of my job. There's a couple of books I read introduced me to property, actually, as obviously being an avid Home Under the Hammer fan. But a couple of books opened my eyes to how you could do it, and then I did property training, but ultimately to get out of the rat race.
So I think the point of this section is have a reason why you want to get into it. Don't just get into buying your first investment property because you think it's the cool thing to do, or you've seen something on the telly maybe, but have a look at people that are actually investing and go and speak to them and ask them about how they got into it and how it's helping their lives and things like that. See if it's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just look at it from all angles rather than it's the cool thing to do or shiny penny syndrome.
Yeah.
Just go where you think everyone else is investing.
Or because your mum tells you.
Oh. Okay, so
Moving on
quickly. I guess the most important thing when looking to buy a property is making sure you can afford the investment and making sure that your finances are ready. So luckily we're joined here with David, who can give us a little bit of a view on just looking at your credit score, deposits, gifted deposits, proof of funds, that kind of thing. So Dave, when a person comes to you saying, I want to buy this house, what are the things that you expect them to have ready?
I mean, there's a whole host of things, really. It depends on your personal circumstances. I think the best advice for someone looking to get into property, looking to buy their first property, is to see their mortgage broker early on. Your broker can have a look at your credit report, see if there's any areas that need any attention, whether that's an old debt that needs paying off or adding yourself onto the voters roll, just to get a good overview of your credit position. They can also have a look at your personal income, your homeowner status, and they can start to put together a list of documents that you're going to need. Generally, things like proofs of income, bank statements, ID is a good starting point, but I think really see your broker, have a look at things in more detail, and they can give you that sort of bespoke list for you, because everyone's different.
Great, yeah, that's great advice. I think just to pick up on one thing you said about the credit score, I know there's a few different places that you can get it from, but we like to give people actionable stuff that you can that they can take away with from this podcast. So I know there's like Experian, that's one of them.
Yeah.
What are the others? Equifax?
Yeah, there's Equifax, Experian, and one called Call Credit.
Yeah.
Lenders will use one or a variation of a couple of different ones.
So
as well.
yeah, just on that point, one I use is called Check My File, and that actually is multi-agency, so you do have to pay for it. It's about 25 quid a quarter, I think, so it's not a lot of money, but it does give you your Experian, your Equifax and your Call Credit scores and data for all of them. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, that's a good report to get. I think the point on that really is to have something that is subscription based, because you should keep an eye on it going forward all the time. If something happens that's beyond your control and you end up with an error on your credit file, you want to know about it as soon as you can to try and rectify it.
So Dave, very quickly then, if someone comes to you with a slightly patchy credit score, there's been some missed payments for whatever reason, is that
Angelos, it's all right. We all miss a payment once in a while. Not counselling session.
Is it game over for that new investor?
Absolutely not. Okay. No. There's lenders that have got a wide range of appetite for anything from missed payments to defaults and CCJs. So again, it's speaking to a good broker, someone that knows investment property. They can look at the lenders that are available and find you a suitable product. It's definitely not the end of the world, but as clean as you can keep your credit, the better in terms of your interest rate and cost.
Fantastic. So we've talked about mortgage broker, definitely a really important person to have in your power team. So Angelos talked earlier about a power team, which is the kind of professionals you need to surround yourself with when you're getting into property investment. So we've got a mortgage broker. So Angelos, who else do you have in yours? Because obviously we're both property investors.
I don't necessarily source properties myself as much anymore. I use sourcing. My mum. It's going to be one of those your mum episodes. I can tell.
Out of context, that might sound weird, but if you listen to the beginning of the podcast,
please don't quote me on that. I use a very good sourcing agent.
Yeah.
Conveyancer, so make sure that you get a really good solicitor, someone who's going to look at the title really thoroughly and look at the searches, because I've used solicitors before in the past where they miss really basic stuff, and it's very frustrating. You're paying them a lot of money and you're doing a better job of it than they are. And
I'm just going to pick up on that point. That's really interesting, and it's something that I found when I bought my first house to live in for myself. I used one of these like conveyor belt conveyancers, solicitors, where you're very much, I don't know if the terms I want to get it right, sausage factory, is that right? Budget, yeah. So you go in, you're just, you're one of many that they're working on, there's no personal relationship. It's very, very cheap, which is why people do it. And that's fine for your own house, but Dave, have you had experience of that with your clients, where they've used really cheap solicitors and actually it's really delayed the whole process?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, both personally and from with clients as well. The solicitors can make or break a deal, especially if you're doing slightly more creative deals, which I'm sure you'll go on to in a future episode. But anything that's outside of the ordinary, a regular conveyancer might not understand it. So it's really, really important that you have a commercially minded solicitor, I think, and one that you can build a relationship with. But yeah, like I said, I've had the wrong choice of solicitor, let's put it that way, the wrong choice of solicitor involved in a deal, and deals have nearly fallen apart because of it.
Yeah. Another person I would also look at is a decent insurance broker. Everyone offers insurance, but to find the right insurance for your property, whether it's an HMO, whether it's a single let or some kind of commercial building, it's very important to get the right type of insurance broker on side pretty much from day one. And then we also have your accountant, because at the end of the day you're going to have to file some kind of report with HMRC.
And I think that's important as well, in that people always think, you just need your accountant at the end of the year, but actually the more you involve them from the very beginning and tell them what your intentions are, what your strategy is, they can help you structure things in the right way, particularly around the Section 24 mortgage interest relief stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes if you don't, it could cost you massively in the long run, because if you see a decent accountant stroke tax strategy expert, they can see your 5-10 year plan, and perhaps you want to buy it through a limited company, perhaps you want to do it for your own name. All these different things, these experts will be able to help you with.
Dave, do you find that you have clients come to you that kind of haven't gone through that process, and you're almost like having to educate them? Obviously, you can't give tax advice, but you're having to educate them on how to structure things if they haven't gone and got that advice independently.
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the things as well is that my job sometimes extends much more than just giving mortgage advice. Whilst I don't give specific advice in other areas, sometimes it's a case of just guiding your clients, pointing them in the right direction. So, I've got very good connections with accountants, tax advisors, solicitors, so I can pass on those connections to clients as well. But yeah, important to get those things looked at. It's probably easier to plan ahead than it is to try and go back and change something if you need to change the structure of ownership or something like that.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And I think lastly, as part of a power team, shall we say, is having a good maintenance man or a building team.
Yeah.
Because inevitably when you have tenants, there will be wear and tear, there will be damage, there'll be acts of God with storms. You'll have to get someone down there fairly quickly to make sure that, first of all, your tenant, who's your most important person, is happy, and definitely. Also you look after your asset, and that is your property.
And also, if you're doing it as an investment, you might want to be adding value in that process anyway. So after you bought it, you might want to do some decoration or add a room or whatever else it is. So definitely having a building team or maintenance guy.
Yep. So you've got your why, you've got your power team, and now you want to find a property. How the hell do we source a property, Mo?
Well, I'll open this up to Dave, but I think probably where most people find their first one is going to be the estate agent. I suppose, do you find most people that have their first investment property get it through an estate agent?
To be honest, I probably find the majority of the clients I see from an estate agent. Yeah. To be honest, same with me, all of mine came from an estate agent. Yeah. I didn't go down the route of using a property sourcer. Rightly or wrongly, I just found deals in estate agents, and I think that's probably the first port of call for most people, is to see what the local agents have got. Yeah,
absolutely. When walking into an estate agent though, Dave, you can't just go up to the first person you see and say, right, I want a house which is 20% below market value, I want it now, I've got cash. Is there a relationship you need to build, a long-term relationship with the agent to find better deals than what's normally advertised?
Yeah, of course. I think probably relating this more to myself, because I was the one that went into the estate agents and did it. I don't go in with clients. It was just really just telling them what I'm looking for. I don't use terms like I need a 20% discount or anything like that. For me, the properties I buy were, or still are, empty and run down. So I'd be asking for properties that they might have had problems selling, that have been on the books for a long time, or anything that is just generally that run down, you can add value.
And there is a hierarchy within estate agencies, aren't there? So you have your Saturday boy, shall we say, or girl, or mixed, who knows? And then you've got your, the top guy, the godfather, the owner of the estate agent, where perhaps they would be more in tune with the latest investment properties, etc., etc. Do you find that working with specific people within the estate agent could yield better results for someone walking off the street?
Yeah, I think you tend to find that the more viewings you do with an estate agent, you'll probably end up seeing the same person time and time again, and naturally that's probably the person you're going to build a relationship with, I think.
Yeah, it's the relationship building, isn't it? That's key, and then, definitely. I think just to go through my own experience as well, we've used property sources a couple of times, mixed results, but it has been good. A lot of stuff with estate agents. There's obviously, you can go direct to the sellers, whether they're advertising their own boards or whether they've got like an online estate agency. There's a few different ways to do it. So, but predominantly for people, I think that are going to be listening, it's going to be the estate agency route.
And let's not forget my mum.
And so if anyone, have you got a contact number if anyone needs to get hold of your mum for a property deal? So the next thing we want to talk about is kind of analysing whether the deal stacks up. So is it actually even a good investment? So I know we were talking earlier about yield. So what exactly is a yield, Angelos?
So a gross yield, I would define it as the yearly rent divided by the purchase cost So
Okay.
that is the purchase price plus any additional works that you've done,
Okay.
and that will return 8%.
So if you bought a house, give an example, if you bought a house for £200,000 and you got £20,000 a year in income, that would be 10% gross yield.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between gross and net?
So net will be what you're left with
Okay.
after expenses such as tax,
Yeah.
mortgage, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
that is, I guess, the true yield is
Yeah.
the one that I like to work with. One thing I would like to say with yield is the fact that it isn't necessarily the best way of measuring whether an investment is whether it is a good way to stack up. So Dave, I'm sure you have other ideas and other ways of measuring whether an investment is a good one or not.
I was just going to add to what you said actually, that a gross yield doesn't take into account all of the costs. Your net yield does, but your net yield is also known as cash flow. So for me, cash flow is the biggest measurement.
Yeah. And also, there's other things that's true, and there's also other things like how much money you've actually got left in the deal at the end. So if you've bought a house and you've added value to it through building work or whatever, or planning permission, and then you've refinanced it, you might not actually have any of your own initial money that you put in there. So your cash flow and the return that you get might only be a few £100, but if you've had all of your money back out that you can then reinvest to do another project, that could be really good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can pull cash out and have £200-300 a month, brilliant.
But there are loads of tools online, and I think we'll be happy to share the stuff that we use in terms of deal analyzer tools. If anyone wants to get in touch with us through our Facebook page, then we're happy to share that kind of stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward, Mo, so we found a good house.
Yeah.
And we've analysed it and it stacks up.
Yeah.
What next?
So you got your mortgage offer. So you've been to see your broker and you've found you've got a good mortgage offer. You've got someone that's going to lend you money. So Dave, what would they give you in terms of what would you actually have in your hand at that point before you had your offer? Would the broker would give you like a bit of paper saying how much the bank was willing to lend you or something?
Yeah, so typically there'll be an agreement in principle.
Yeah.
I think that the thing really to stress on buy-to-let mortgages, the affordability side and your maximum borrowing isn't really geared up to your personal affordability. They'll want to see income there of some degree, but the loan is stress tested against the rental income.
Okay.
So the affordability bit is really covered by the rental income that property is going to produce against the amount of money you want to borrow. But what paper do they get? Typically you can get an agreement in principle, which is sort of a pre-agreement before your full application that you can borrow the money up to X amount.
So you have your agreement in principle, you agree a purchase price with the agent and the seller, and then I guess is the conveyancing process, the dark world of conveyancing. How long does that normally take to have a house fully conveyanced? That is a word. Conveyanced. Before people can start looking at setting exchange and completion dates.
So I mean the legal work will really depend on who your solicitor is or who your conveyancer is. Very, very, very broadly speaking, I tend to say on a purchase, look at anything from 8 to 12 weeks from your offer to completion. It's not to say it can't be done a lot quicker. We've had deals go through in 3 or 4 weeks, if not shorter. On the flip side of that, I've had deals that have been particularly tricky and they've taken a lot longer to go through. But as a ballpark, I'd say be prepared for 8 to 12 weeks for the whole process.
And Angelos, what exactly is the conveyancer doing during that time? Obviously, that's quite a long time. What are they doing during that process?
So it seems like a lifetime when you're waiting for the conveyancer to do their job, and sometimes it can be very frustrating, and sometimes you really need to be on their backs, even though you're paying them a lot of money. They may be so busy, or they pass it on to their assistant. So I just want to say that first. But ultimately, the job of a conveyancer is to act on your behalf to make sure that there's nothing in the title, there's nothing that comes in or is returned in the searches from the local council, or water or whatever it may be. To make sure that it doesn't trip you up in the future.
So it could be something like the plan to extend the runway at Heathrow, and it's going to go right through your garden or something.
Exactly, and there isn't anything that you should be aware of, like Mo said, anything that could affect your actual title, your land at the end of the day.
And they're also working on behalf of the lender, aren't they, Dave? Because they're not just acting for you, because actually, in most cases, the bank or the lender is going to own even though you own it in name, they basically own most of it.
Yeah, so the mortgage is secured against the property,
Yeah.
so the security for the lender is the property. So yeah, solicitor will act for both you as a buyer and the lender. So they've got two lots of responsibilities, making sure that what you're buying is what you're buying, and also making sure that what you're buying is suitable security for the lender.
Also, Mo, covenants. There could be some really old covenants that are attached to a title. So what is a covenant? Basically, it's a condition of the title stroke property stroke land where you can or cannot do a certain thing. So for example, you've got the chancel covenant where the Church of England at one point may have had an interest on your property or land, and that you may have to pay them a certain amount of money every year. There are insurances to try and mitigate some of these issues, because sometimes covenants may have expired or they've lost track of who the next generation is if they wanted to enforce it. So sometimes you can protect yourself with insurances to make sure that nothing comes back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah, just an example that I've actually had recently with a client. Property they were buying, they wanted to convert it to an HMO, so House of Multiple Occupancy. There was a covenant on the title which restricted usage for more than 2 households out of the building, I think. So it's going to be a 6-bed HMO, it was going to be deemed to be 6 households. As such, they couldn't then convert to HMO, so that one didn't actually go through for the client. They pulled out as soon as they realised that.
I had an interesting one where the front garden in the covenant said it could only be used to house chickens. And we wanted to make it into a driveway, so luckily we managed to get an insurance policy for that, because I think that was set in 1850, where perhaps chickens aren't necessarily the main thing you put in the front garden anymore. So sometimes you can come up with these really weird and wonderful stuff, but you just need to be aware of it, and you need to make sure that your conveyancer is working well for you. Okay, so we've done the conveyancing, everything seems to be fine. I've heard these terms, Mo, exchange and completion. What's the difference between the two, please?
So, to summarise, exchange is actually when your solicitors will exchange contract with the seller's solicitor, and all the contracts will be formalised, and completion will actually be when and there's usually the deposits paid on that point, and completion is when the final amount of monies go across. So, can happen on the same day, quite a lot of times, or can be delayed for months actually, depending on what the deal is. Probably not on your first buy-to-let property investment. It will probably be, it's typically a week, and it gives the time for the lender to just send the funds across to your solicitor and make sure they've got them in good time.
Yeah, just to add on the exchange part there as well, I think another way of phrasing it is you're legally committing to buy the property, and the seller's legally committing to sell it to you as well. So that makes the deal watertight.
Yeah.
So what happens if they pull out after completion, Dave? What is there a penalty? I mean, you say you're legally bound together. What
After
what
exchange,
after
before
exchange.
completion.
Before completion.
That's probably going to be one for a solicitor to ask. I would think that they can't, or there'd be penalties to get out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely penalties, and if you can prove that you've suffered some kind of loss by the person who's buying the property off you pulling out, certainly legal fees and changes in the market or any rental income you have lost out, depending on how long it is, you can definitely sue for that.
I think as a buyer, you potentially could lose your deposit as well.
Potentially. We'll have to,
we'll check on that one. So Mo, we've completed. I've got keys in my hand. I'm really excited. I need to maybe do some works in the house. I mean, what's the next step now?
So I think really, if you're thinking about doing works to the property to add value, then you should really think about that up front and get a builder to go around and give you a quote for the work beforehand, because you're going to have to factor that into your deal analyzer when you're looking at the deal up front. So get someone to go around if you've got a relationship with a builder, or get 3 or 4 quotes if you don't have any relationships with anyone, so you can just get a spread of how much it's going to cost. Factor that into your costs, and then once you've got the keys, you can get them started on site and get the build done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, plan. You can get them in there before you are at that point, so you don't need to ask them. So you can effectively, from day one, as soon as you get the keys, you can give it to the builder and they can just crack on.
Yeah. And then it's on to managing the property. So you've done the work and you want to get people in and then get it managed. Dave, do you self-manage or do you have agents, or how do you work it?
Personally, I think all of mine, bar one, are all with managing agents.
Yeah.
The one that isn't, I rarely ever hear from them anyway.
Yeah.
I just haven't moved it across to a managing agent.
Yeah. Angelos?
It's a 50-50 split at the moment, but I am looking to move all of them across to an agent eventually, simply because, like Dave, I'd have very quiet tenants. Everything is running well, the house is well looked after, and they're happy to be left alone. And apart from the odd visit for whatever reason, they're happy. My portfolio further away from where I live obviously has to be managed with an agent, and you have to manage that agent. But there is an argument of self-managing versus using an agent. Obviously, if you self-manage, you do save an element of cost. But having said that, to self-manage is not a light undertaking, because I think there's over 100 different regulations to be aware of, and perhaps your time is best spent looking at the next investment property, because ultimately we're doing this as an investment as opposed to us wanting to be a landlord, and there is a big difference between the two.
Absolutely, and we've got a couple of things to mention. We've got a podcast coming out with Philip Oak from GA Solicitors, who or maybe out already, depending on the order, the sequence of these go out. And he's going through the how to legally get your property back if you're trying to evict someone or if they won't leave, and the amount of documentation that you have to have prepared up front in terms of EPC certificates, gas safety certificates, prescribed information about tenancy deposits, ASTs, all of this stuff that you need up front. It can be a bit of a minefield, really. We actually started off managing. We started managing our own properties. Then we went to actually use, when we had less, then we went to use an agent, and actually then we got to a point that we had enough units that we actually started our own letting agency, and that means that you just need one person that's really clued up on all of the regulation, and we can cover the cost of managing our own properties by managing other people's as well. So I think there's definitely arguments for both sides, depending on what you want to do. Are you an investor, and do you just focus on the investment side, or do you actually want to get involved with that kind of stuff?
Brilliant. So we've had a look at the importance of why. Why do you want to invest in buy-to-let? Making sure that your finances are ready, and making sure that you also have a good power team in place. And then we've had a look at very quickly how to source a property. There are many different ways of sourcing a property.
Angelos' mum.
Yet again the mum's brought in. Analysing whether the deal stacks up and what happens once you found a good house, what happens next. And we've had a look at that very quickly. And the importance of having a good conveyancer. And then we've looked at how to set an exchange and completion date and post-purchase, whether you want to manage it yourself or whether you want to use a letting agent.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and obviously David, myself and Angelos are all property investors, so we're happy to answer any questions anyone's got. But David from 360 Mortgages, thank you very much for your time today and joining us, and for bringing your expertise on this subject. It's really invaluable. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, drop me an email or look me up on Facebook. My email address is david@360mortgages.com, and that's the word 60. Or on Facebook, it's David Aggiss, AGGISS.
Thanks again, David, and thank you to the listeners at home for listening to Pig Pods, your success podcast. Click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments in the Pig Pod Facebook community. I've been Angelos.
And I've been Mo.
And see you again on the next exciting Pig Pod.
You've been listening to Pig Pods. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.pig.network.